Are you thinking about making a move to Portugal but you're confused as to whether you'll qualify for the non-habitual residence scheme? Well, I just wanted to reassure you that you will. Well, the vast majority of people will, and that's because the only real condition is that you haven't been a tax resident here in the last 5 years. And if you tick that box, you're effectively in. But watch until the end of the video because we're going to be covering some planning points that will ensure you're making the NHR scheme work for you during those 10 years that you're going to be an NHR resident, and also importantly covering some potentially costly mistakes. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Mark Quinn. I'm a chartered financial planner and UK qualified tax advisor. I've been advising expats looking to move to Portugal for almost 10 years now. And if you want to be kept up to date on these kinds of issues, finance, tax, investments and pension issues affecting expats here, please subscribe to the channel and also make sure you click the notification icon below. So the confusion around the qualification question, will I qualify for NHR, I think stems from the fact that there is a series of rules within the NHR scheme where you do need to qualify for certain benefits. So what I often describe the NHR scheme as being is it's like a box, and within that overall box you've got a series of sub boxes, and those boxes will determine how different parts of your affairs are taxed. So for example, within the NHR scheme as a whole, you have a pension box. So if your money is coming from a non-Portuguese pension scheme, any income from that pension will be taxed at a flat rate of 10%. It's very simple. Another box within the scheme would be dividends, for example. So if you have dividend income, the rule is that as long as it's potentially taxable in the source state from where the dividend is being paid, the dividend here within the pension box would be tax-free. Now, the other box within the NHR scheme is the employment box. Now, as a default position, if you're working in Portugal, you pay tax at normal scale rate. So I'm a Portuguese taxpayer. I'm also a non-habitual resident. However, because I'm performing the work on Portuguese soil, I pay tax at standard scale rate. So they start off at around 14% and they go as high as 48%, depending on which level of income banding you fit into. However, there is a concession, and that concession is that if you qualify as what's called a high valued activity, then you can potentially pay a much lower tax rate of 20%, which is very attractive because, as I say, the tax rates can go as high as 48%. And this is where the qualification comes in, because in order to get that flat 20%, you have to be considered what's called a high value activity, which tax advice, financial advice isn't. There are certain categories of workers that are. So for example, engineers, people in IT, in the IT space, directors or senior manager level employees. These will be the types of role that will be considered high valued activity. And again, I think that's where the confusion comes from, because people think that in order to qualify for NHR as a whole, you need to be qualifying for this high valued activity. But as I say, that's not. It's just a specific exemption and rule that applies to that employment box within the NHR scheme as a whole. Just some smaller points just to be aware of. Even though the main condition is the 5-year non-residence prior to becoming an NHR, you also need to have a permanent address. Now that doesn't need to be a property you own, it can be a rental property, so you don't necessarily have to buy to qualify for an NHR. And I've said this a lot in my previous videos, which I'll link to in the description below. You need to plan for NHR, and you need to plan before you even become a Portuguese tax resident. So the ideal time to start planning is when you're in your current country of residence. That gives you the opportunity to utilise any allowances and exemptions you have in your home country before entering the Portuguese tax system. And equally, when you arrive in Portugal, you need to make sure you're structuring your affairs to optimise the NHR window. So I've seen some planning mistakes that's cost clients, several thousands, and in some cases several hundreds of thousands in unnecessary tax because they haven't done the correct planning. So really want a roadmap of what to do and when, what to do before you leave your current country, what to do after you arrive in Portugal, and any planning you need to be doing along the way. Also be aware of the deadline for applying for an HR, because this is critical, because if you don't meet this, you lose the right to apply for an HR, full stop. So if you're getting residency at any point during this year, 2023, you need to be getting your NHR status sorted by the 31st of March 2024. And I would advise you to do that as soon as possible, because things can take some time to be done here in Portugal. So don't delay, just get on with it as soon as you can. So I hope you found that video useful. I'm always open to suggestions for new videos. Any questions or confusing areas, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to do a new video about that specific issue. Thank you.